Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live Muscle Ramblings Carnivore Style number 43. We have Jonathan, aka the Composition Consultant, here, of course, and the wonderful Jerome from 18 Minute Fitness, because that is all you need. Hello, boys. How are you? Oh, and me, Sophie, obviously. Everyone knows me. Got Jonathan on the bloody sound. We should probably take that
Extra
away from
effects.
him. Extra
Yeah.
effects. That's what you all pay for, love. That's what you all
That's
pay
what we'll
for.
pay for.
Yeah.
Get them memberships in so you can get more sound effects.
Yeah, more sound effects.
How are you chaps anyway?
Hanging in there. How are you?
Not too bad. Covered in paint, so I do excuse the blueness everywhere. You painted a bench today.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, and you painted one too, did you? Fantastic.
No, we weren't painting a bench. I just had my daughter this last weekend, and we're always doing some kind of arts and crafts.
I'm not allowed in a paint room.
No. He's too messy. He's messier than
messy.
muddy.
Too
Oh,
messy.
too messy.
Yeah. So the itinerary for tonight, guys. Jeremy and I will probably briefly go through his outline of his current preparations. Basically, at the end of his first week, I'm guessing. Then we'll look at some videos that I've been sent to critique. One of them was actually from a close friend of mine. Actually, very close friend, which is she's also very little. Sophie knows what video that is. What else? Yeah, I'll probably be eating for the second half of it. But please excuse me, I've not had time yet to actually have dinner. Fun enough, so that's life. But we're here, we're answering questions. So that's the best, most important thing. Anyway,
I'm
we shall
probably not
continue.
what video this is.
It's a very good, high quality video. Very
Okay.
good. Yes. Right. So, Jerome, how's the week gone? How's your
Good.
fat loss? How's your training? How's your recovery?
Yeah.
Are you still tired?
I'm always tired. It's went by surprisingly fast. The actual diet has been very easy. I've wanted to keep things as consistent as possible, so I wanted to hang on and stick to the plan before I asked any changes. So in your outline, you said that I could switch things as long as I keep like the macro counts the same. I've noticed that, like, especially some of these later nights, my appetite later in the night's been getting a little out of control. I'm not always hungry for breakfast, but like later in the night, it's getting pretty crazy. So with me not making any changes at the moment, could I take that down to 2 meals and still keep the same same total macros for the day, but put it in 2 meals or put it in a 1 meal? I guess I have my thoughts on it, but I didn't want to make any changes without your insight.
That's fair enough, yeah. I think for asking, we'll deduct your calories by 1,000 this week.
All right, that's fair. I deserve that.
No, yeah,
Ramp
2
up
meals
the heat.
versus 3. Yeah, it's like I said, guys. Like I said to you in the form, obviously, just split it up in a way it makes sense to you. So it's not critical that you do it, just as long as you feed that back to me. It's the same with any client. If you find I give people an outline in their diet plans where I sort of say, okay, you get a plus 5 or 10 gram deviation from the macronutrient amounts. Just let me know if you tend to go higher or lower, and of course then you just split up the meals how it suits you. So for you, Jeremy, we'll be having, I think it's 3 eggs, I want to say 15 grams of butter, and I think it's about 300 grams of beef, something like that.
Yep. Yeah. So at least right now it's 3 meals a day: 200 grams of beef, 2 eggs, 20 grams of cheese, and 10 grams of butter. So if I took that to 2 meals and kept the macros the same, maybe 300 grams of beef, 3 eggs, 30 grams of cheese, and 15 grams of butter. I just didn't want to. I didn't think it would be a big difference, or arguably even noticeable at all. But like I said, when I started this, I wanted to hold everything exactly as close to the plan as possible without making any changes, without asking you. But otherwise, soreness had a lot of delayed onset muscle soreness this last week. Workouts actually felt really good for most of the movements. I'm really not the biggest fan of my leg extension machine. It's okay for leg curls, but the leg extensions, the pad rides up a little higher on my shins than I like, so it makes leg extensions very uncomfortable. And sleep has been terrible as usual, but yeah, I almost missed this live stream because of that. But
I was asleep just now as well, so no issue.
yeah, but
Yeah.
all in all, the only thing, like, my weight has, like, went down a little bit and then bumped back up, and I know there's like fluid, there's a million things that can affect weights. My suspicion was, having not taken creatine for well over a decade, that taking 5 grams a day, maybe I'm retaining a little bit of water, as happens when you take creatine monohydrate. But clothes are fitting better, and I assume any water weight I'm gaining is probably offset by about an equivocal amount of fat loss in terms of just total poundage.
Yeah.
All in all, training went well. Sore, but I'm not sore anymore. I have to do my workout today. Sleep's been terrible, but the diet's been really easy to stick to. So far, it's pretty straightforward.
That makes sense. Yeah, so if Jerome was checking in with me for email, he would have written down all those points. You know, sleep, training, recovery, appetite, his thoughts towards the diet, his feelings towards the training, any issues he's had, and he's done exactly that. So that's an example of like a perfect check-in, guys. So I've got all the information I need. So now I can look at it, and I usually go through it in a point-by-point fashion. I usually start with the diet because it seems like the biggest impactor of body composition outcomes. So that's the main thing I'm thinking about first. Just for, I don't know, completeness, I'll probably say yes, reduce your meal intake down to 2 meals per day. If you notice that you're hungrier later at night and that's still not working for you, feel free to split it a bit more in favour of your nighttime meal, so maybe 60-40 or something like that. You'll still get 2 sufficient meals in, so that's the main thing.
Okay.
Other points as well, it's always a pain with certain equipment, and I appreciate that, because it's easy for me, the programmer, to say, okay, do this leg press, do this leg extension. For some people, there are 3 or 4 different leg presses in their gym. They might have a preferred one. So that's an example of where you need to be specific with me when a client is asking, which one should I do? You know, I need to work out which is best for you. Now, if it's a case that the one that I seem to find is optimal isn't optimal for the client, I might ask for a training clip. So I might say, okay, well, the leg press, the leg extension, the one that you selected is like this. Maybe you're rushing the reps. Maybe you aren't planting your hips and glutes into the seat properly. Maybe you're not gripping onto it in the right way, something like that. There's always trial and error. So it's not a case of me changing something for the sake of change because a client doesn't like something. I need to work out why it is they don't like it. And Dre's been very honest. He said, you know, the leg extension that I've got isn't that great. It rides up his shins, which is really annoying. So I might sort of suggest, you know, use a towel or something, use a sponge thing if you have it. Some kind of like, maybe like put your socks up or something. But failing that, it might be a case of just using the leg extension later in the workout, where you're going to have weaker thigh muscles. So you'd actually put that further back. If it's causing you such disruption that you don't like doing it,
sure,
then maybe you'll do the leg curl, the leg press, then the leg extension in that order. You'll still get the same sort of benefit. It just means that you have to readjust your weights to assume that you've now got a more strength, more strength and endurance to do the leg press. Because if you're doing it sooner in your workout, you're going to be doing a heavier weight. So, of course, Jerome would then, you know, execute that. And he might work out, okay, I can do an extra 5-10 kilos or 10 pounds more on the leg press this time. It might mean that his time under load will go up by, you know, 10 seconds or something like that, or might even go down. So he can work that out for himself.
Don't skip
from
leg
that
day.
point, never skip leg day. That's the key point here. Yeah.
And if I'm able to keep and I haven't done this yet, but if I'm able to keep macros within, you know, 2 to 3 grams, do you have any issue if I had a day where I took, like, instead of my normal diet, if I just had, what's the math? Something almost like 800 grams of beef and then just a little bit of butter to still hit the same macronutrient numbers instead of beef, eggs, cheese, butter. If I just had a shit ton of beef and then a little bit of butter to hit the same amount as long as I'm taking all the drippings from the pan. My hesitancy with doing that is I generally think simple is best. And the more consistent I can be with what I'm eating, just the easier and the more mindless it's going to be. And it's going to save me a lot of math, and it's going to save any potential calculation issues or me making some mistake along the way. But if I wanted to have a day where I had one meal and it was like just beef and salt and maybe a little bit of fat to hit that same macronutrient number, is that fine according to how you plan things, or do you generally would say try to limit those days?
Yeah, that's a very reasonable adjustment to make. As you guys will probably know if you've been watching me online, I always just try to keep it really simple, but then allow some natural deviation. And that's completely fine. The main point is to get the macronutrient intake in, so the grams over the course of a day. Now, Jerome has a training frequency currently of 3 sessions per week. If he had, say, 1 session per week, I might be more critical about when he has that, beef, salt, and butter kind of only day. It might have a more significant impact on his training performance. But if it's your day on a Saturday or Sunday, which is when he's got the most amount of recuperation period from training, because he has 2 consecutive days of rest, then that might be a good way to put it. Maybe one of those days. But at this point, I think just doing what's most important, which is getting in the macronutrient grams, is critical, I think.
Gotcha.
Outside of that, down the line, yeah, we can look at changing things up more, being a bit more hyper-focused, like, okay, I need you to have a significantly higher portion of fat in this meal versus that meal. If you're, say, 2-3 weeks out, that might make a difference. But yeah, the main thing is the bolus of food in a given day.
Gotcha.
And what are the other points as well? So we went a little bit over training. You're very sore. You're very fatigued.
Fatigue, the soreness went away pretty quick. And I know a lot of the fatigue, and I kind of touched on my schedule, is just I have a number of days where sleep is sorely lacking. And I can kind of make up for that on some days with my schedule. The weekends I don't have my daughter, I can catch up on sleep a little bit. But having just had my daughter this last weekend, she thought it was funny to not let me sleep. So I had a couple days stretching in a row where I don't think I slept more than 60 or 90 minutes at a time. And the sleep that I was getting, she thought it was funny to stand over me like this while I was sleeping. And I woke up like, holy shit. And then I was really paranoid.
Sounds familiar.
To not go back asleep. So
she sounds fantastic.
yeah, I wonder where she gets some of that
humor
from.
Oh, I'll have to give her some pointers.
But it's and maybe I'd kind of like to hear your thoughts on it. I've noticed that as total sleep and sleep quality is going down, even holding my food exactly the same, and I'm using my food scale. I'm measuring things down to the gram. Like my beef is not. It's not 201 grams. It's not 199 grams.
Definitely not.
I'm measuring that shit like exactly to the gram, and then I'm cooking it, and I'm getting all the fat I can out of the pan. I'm trying to be as consistent as possible. But the days I sleep, my weight goes down, and the days I don't sleep, it's like creeping up. So it's kind of this cycle, and I'm trying to largely track almost like a best fit line.
My scale
that matches my experience.
Okay.
Sophie in particular seems to be someone very sensitive to a lack of sleep. I've had nights before where I've been in a pre-contest, preparation sort of thing, and I've not slept well for maybe 2 or 3 nights, but my weight's just been the same. But I've been ravenously hungry, so it's like, how does that work? So it's almost like your body just holds on to more water in times of perceived stress and lack of recovery.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that in that sort of instance, we'd look at what the Renfo scales are saying, but we might be a bit more hesitant or maybe a bit more critical to sort of rely on them. So we're looking at the scale to say, well, okay, the body fat percentage hasn't quite gone down much, or that this, that, and the other. The body weight's not gone down much, but like I said earlier, your clothes are fitting a bit better. If you feel less puffy, if you feel less bloated, that means something is positive is happening, because that's usually things that correlate with fat loss. So yeah, no issues there really. Did you weigh yourself today, Jerome?
I have not today. Not with aside from the last 35 minutes before we went live, I haven't slept in probably about 30 hours. So,
Yeah, get your kit off and get on the scale.
yeah. So
I'm kidding, guys.
I'll be able to sleep tonight. Just I'm in like a rough stretch right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I always say to people, get your ducks lined up in a row before you compete, because it is a tough ordeal. But I understand, Jerome, you're looking to drop some hours a bit, so that should alleviate some of the experience that you're having right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
And
what
I'm
else is there to cover?
Things have been pretty straightforward. I mean, the soreness was more than usual, but it didn't last very long. And I think a lot of that is just eating very clean, eating an appropriate amount of food, even though we're doing a relatively aggressive food mass cut right now because I still have a decent amount of fat to lose. I will take another progress photo and get that to you probably this weekend. Then I should see a little bit more stabilization with my sleep. And I will definitely get you some scale numbers moving forward. But I'm really looking forward to this next weigh-in. I tend to think of it like Mondays as kind of like the firm day that we started together. And I knew there was going to be some initial fluctuations with getting acclimated to this precise diet, and especially like taking a little bit of creatine, my sleep still being all over the place. But with things starting to stabilize and follow a little bit more into routine, I'm looking forward to seeing how the next kind of official scale numbers look. But I'll get you pictures and screenshots from the Renfo scale, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday at the latest.
Yeah, the main thing I'm looking at for Jerome right now is the silhouette. Is a silhouette of his, particularly his midsection and any sort of problem areas, is that going down or not? That's all we're looking at, really. We're not looking about like drastic sort of changes in measurements, really. We're just looking at the general silhouette. Are the shoulders staying wide and the tummy is getting tight? That's all it really is. And 2 weeks is a good period of time between like firm sort of check-in photos, I think. Especially early on. I think any more than that is a bit OTT. Then perhaps we'll do it every 3 to 4 days as we get like the month out, sort of thing.
Sure. I was thinking
that's quite common.
I was imagining probably by 12 weeks through 6 weeks, once a week, and then probably more frequently than that, because I've talked about it before. Once you hit a certain point of leanness, you should visually in the mirror see changes almost daily, once you hit a certain level of leanness. But I'm trying to step back into my novice client shoes here and just empty my cup and just lean on you for everything.
Empty the cup. Yeah, Jerome's been a pleasure to work with so far. He asked very sensible questions, and he does what's needed, so I couldn't ask for more at this point.
Well, I'm constantly blowing up Jonathan's phone, and I think it's something a lot of people don't realize is, even being on different sides of the pond, I think I probably send him questions sometime at like 11 o'clock his time at night, sometimes as early as like 4, 5, 6 in the morning. I think I constantly have a small influx of messages and questions heading Jonathan's way. I'm trying to make this as easy for myself and as hard for him as possible throughout this entire
get your money's
You're
worth.
who I'm losing him to. It's you that he's talking to every night. Knew it.
Yeah.
It's like those beams, isn't it, Jerome? Like what she thinks I'm doing when when the guy's like on his phone, it's just a picture of Jerome like doing like weightlifting and stuff.
Why are you finding your phone? Who are you talking to?
How's that meme go? I bet he's thinking about other women.
Other girls,
Yeah, and then it's Jonathan on his phone, like, should I cut 15 grams of fat or protein from Jerome's first food mass cut?
I'm trying to optimize a perfect protein butter bite recipe and changing thumbnails. I make each thumbnail takes about 10 edits to make sometimes. So, but yeah, so it's all YouTube stuff and client stuff, like all hours of every day. Most clients check in between Friday and Sunday for the most part. Some Monday as well. Yes, it's quite a pleasure. And I know on the weekend I'm busy doing that sort of thing, and it gives people a whole day. So an example of where I'm actually consulting with someone for email, for example, or message, we might do a back and forth kind of like voice note thing. But in most cases I respond within minutes, even long emails. Like Zbigniew checked in tonight, I think. Was it yesterday? What's today? Monday. It was yesterday he checked in.
Yeah, normally Sundays.
Yeah, usually checks in about 6 o'clock our time. I usually, for the most part, reply about 7. So that's to all of his questions and all of his stuff, and he gives you lots of detail, which is really helpful. Yeah, slow and steady wins the race.
Excellent.
But yeah, brilliant. Is there
I
anything else to cover? You
No,
got your-
I appreciate you assuaging all of my concerns so far and answering all my questions in a timely manner. Like I said, Sophie knows to an extent, but I've been blowing up Jonathan's phone more than most people realize so far, and there's a lot of time left, and it's only going to get worse. The closer we get, and as I start losing my shit closer to the day of the show.
Unfortunately, you're quite stoic, so it's not the biggest deal. I know with you, because I know on a much more intimate level, so to speak, than most people. I don't question that Jerome's
Jerome
and I are very intimate.
Yeah, in a different way.
Yeah. All right.
I was gonna accuse Jonathan of blushing, but I think it's just the light that he has on his camera.
It's a light, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of messing around because the light is quite a strong light, but I tried to adapt it so it doesn't look like it's whitening out my face, which looks horrendous.
Jonathan doesn't have emotions anymore. It's just
No.
it's just a machine.
No, I killed him. I killed those emotions.
I felt a little bit troubled earlier that I had to make some calls, Jerome, about that thing that I mentioned. I think was it last night or this morning. So just getting that thing sorted out, and Sophie knows what I'm about. But yeah, it just takes a lot of time, these things. Anyway, that's it. So Jerome's got an action plan for next week.
Fantastic.
Reduced to 2 meals. If he really wants a bigger meal in the evening, he could increase the size of that meal and decrease the size of the first meal. Just be conscious of recovery, have a bit more rest if he needs it. Stick to the training. The training seems to work, and any novel stimulus will give you more soreness, so that doesn't indicate to me that you're suffering. If you told me that your DOMs are horrendous and you feel sick and you're lying in bed like with shivers, okay, yeah, then I'd probably change it, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So
Yeah, no. Joke's on
So
you guys. I
Jerome-
don't even lie in bed most nights.
So, Jerome, are you literally going to split one of your meals equally into both ones and see how that goes, or do you think you're going to go for a heavier meal in the evening?
I'm more often than not, I'm not hungry for breakfast. So just again, to keep things simple, my thought was make lunch and dinner. Lunch right around noon, dinner right around 6 o'clock at night. 300 grams of beef, 3 eggs, 30 grams of cheddar, and 15 grams of butter. And continue to weigh everything out to the gram. And sometimes I'm lazy and I'll eat like half of it raw while some of the beef is cooking. But yeah, it's. I mean, really, it takes an extra 60 seconds maybe out of your day to actually weigh all of your food compared to if you're eating a little bit more instinctually or just visually. So it kind of makes me think too at the same time, what I'm doing is not that much more crazy than, just the average carnivore that might be wanting to improve their body composition a little bit, but we're able to execute it at a higher level with just a little bit more effort.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's maybe I think the most beautiful thing about this process so far is carnivores habitually tend to eat a lot of the same foods anyways. So just taking it to where every meal is literally the same is just a slight step beyond that. But I will let you guys know how that goes. At the moment, I have no intention of really doing anything crazy in terms of trying to, have a massive portion of salmon instead of beef or anything like that. I think in a lot of ways, simple is going to be best for a long time in this contest prep.
Like you say, it takes a thought out of it. If your food is exactly the same all the time, same amount, it takes a thought out of it. I just couldn't eat the same meal every meal day in, day out. I honestly don't know how you boys do it. I have to have variety. I think that's why I struggled with the lion diet, because obviously that's just beef, salt, and water. And when I started carnivore, I was just having the same stuff, and I get bored of the same food, and it if I eat it too many times, the thought of it makes me feel sick. I just can't.
Jonathan and I are completely bereft of any and all emotion or compassion or connection with any other human being. So, or food. Food is at least in a contest prep mindset, it's a utility. It's a tool used to achieve a goal, no more, no less. And I suppose if we do get to take a little bit of pleasure out of it, cool. But like I said, when we first got started, if Jonathan put me on a diet of white rice, chicken, and broccoli, I would eat it with a big stupid face, because that's what's going to get me, to that goal that day. And God knows I've done enough contest preps doing that diet. So thank you.
I guess if I was doing a contest prep, then it might, like I say, take the stress out of it, of just having the same stuff. So it might be different, but I think with the position I'm in at the minute, I just, hats off to you boys for having the same meal day in, day out. I just couldn't do it.
Well, there's an old adage that holds true, and maybe it's just you need a couple of competitions under your belt, but there's a big difference between exercising and training. And training is like when everything's locked in and there's a firm goal and you have to execute, and everything has to be, achieved at a higher level. And exercising is, more recreational. It's something you do because you love it. It's good for your body. But training is another animal. And in a lot of ways, me doing this contest prep and knowing how it's going to help grow my business here locally. In a lot of ways, it's my job. And try and grow a personal training studio. Like, who the hell's gonna want to sign up with me if I'm out of shape? So, in a lot of ways, right now at the moment, I'm just. This is, I don't have a choice. This is who I am, and it's what I'm all about, and it's pointing my life in the direction of where I want it to go, personally and professionally. And so, what else is there besides just to execute the plan?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. A good plan's important. Very important. I got a video coming up about I can't remember what I've titled it as. I don't even know if I've actually made the video yet. I know what it's gonna say. I don't even know if I've made it, but yeah, it's about plan, goal setting, and why people don't achieve their goals. Basically, 7-minute video, brilliant, explains it very well. Look out for that one.
Yeah. Get
I
the
think that
notifications
covers it.
on.
Yeah, definitely do that. Audio is good, apparently. There's still a slight lag between my voice and the video, but I'm stuck with that one. I think I don't know how to fix that. I think so. Ben's here.
Look fine to me as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's improved it. There was a time where there was that few second delay, but it seems to be in sync now.
Yeah, I've optimized my system for streaming, basically. So apparently, with lots of buttons.
On my phone in the living room. So
yeah, that's all right.
when Jonathan's not here, you don't get good quality stuff from me, I'm afraid.
Sophie's video, by the way, guys, it got 1,300 views so far. So that's the first video that I've made that I've quite heavily edited. It seems to pay off. So it's either my editing skills or Sophie's rambling that pulled it off. So I'm not sure which one of those is yet, but it's a good video. It's a very honest video. It's the sort of video that should appeal to lots of people because it sort of covers a lot of issues that a lot of people have in the carnivore diet.
Except for that one person that obviously didn't like the fact that I was adding some fruits and veggies in, and the kids were eating some fruits and veggies, or whoever that person is.
They probably don't have children to be able to comment, or their children aren't living with them now whilst they've been doing a carnivore diet.
It's always funny when people try to parent other people's kids and try to tell a parent how to parent when they probably don't even have kids themselves.
Yep.
Always makes me laugh.
Say hello to everyone in the chat. Nicole, thank you for joining.
Hello. I can't
Please
see the
leave
chat.
sensible questions.
I thought you were telling her to.
I think I've remembered what video you're on about now.
Which one?
For critique. The one that you're critiquing.
Yeah.
Live now. Yeah, I remember it now.
I'm just going to quickly go through the chat. hello to everyone that is here right now. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to go through and just see if there's any questions because I want to get to the point and look at the stuff.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to press these buttons sometimes. So from Pro Rhymal Mike, do you think people on carnivore diet experience less DOMs? If I don't feel it, does it mean I don't train hard enough? So DOMs are defined as delayed onset muscle soreness, which is a phenomena that occurs as a result of intensive exercise and resistance to the muscle tissues. Sophie and Jerome, what experience do you have with this?
Well, I don't always get muscle soreness. So when it says if I don't feel it, does it mean I haven't trained hard enough? Not at all, no, because everybody is different. Just because my muscles aren't sore doesn't mean that I haven't trained them hard enough. It could just, I don't know, whatever protein it was that day is, helped along the way, whatever the scientific way of saying that is. I haven't got a Scooby-Doo. But no, that's not always the way. Like Jerome said, he was quite sore, but that doesn't mean he's like overworked or trained extra hard. Everyone's different.
Yep. In my experience, from what I've seen, there are between 8 and 12 different competing hypotheses as far as what the primary driver of delayed onset muscle soreness is. A lot of commonalities tend to be the imposition of a novel stimulus, doing a movement or a movement pattern that you haven't done in a long time, or maybe after a prolonged layoff from training. Otherwise, training a muscle near the fully stretched position seems to give a large number of people more muscle soreness, or even focusing more on the eccentric or the lowering of a weight, the lengthening of a muscle against resistance has been linked or associated with some people experiencing more muscle soreness. Does that do I think people on a carnivore diet generally experience less muscle soreness? In my experience, yes. Although I would only be able to guess as far as the underlying physiologic mechanisms that underpin that particular novel observation. But as Sophie correctly pointed out, just because you didn't get sore does not mean that you didn't have a good workout. Too many people chase soreness and they feel like they didn't get a good enough workout if they're not sore. But the only objective measure of a good workout is your very next workout. Are you able to do more reps, more weight, more time under load, or just in general improve performance compared to your previous workout? That's all that matters. Is that next workout is, do you have something objective that you can compare to your previous workout to actually show that there's some degree of improvement?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said. I don't have much to add to that. I find that I experience less soreness, but I haven't noticed that as an association with improved muscle gains from having more soreness. So it indicates that you've worked to target muscle, which is good. But what you'll find is if you repeatedly do the same bout of activity, you'll notice that your recovery in terms of muscle soreness will improve after the point. So you'll be less sore as you're doing the same workout. So the idea is not to chase soreness, but to chase improvements in exercise performance. So you train hard and you recover just a little bit harder so you can build it back and develop muscle and grow bigger, better, faster than ever before.
More gains.
Yeah. I don't experience much soreness nowadays. It's like Jerome said, heavy eccentrics, negative portions, short lengthened position of the muscle. That seems to be what does it, and that holds true to what I think. Jerome, out of interest, have you looked at the research recently on the calf raises, particularly where they've overloaded the muscles in a stretched position?
Yeah, my problem with some of those, and I think House of Hypertrophy did a video trying to argue that training a muscle in the stretched position creates a better growth stimulus compared to a shorter range of movement. My problem is even trying to read those studies is if they're not controlling for time under load, training a muscle over a larger range of movement could lead to a larger time under load, which could create a better stimulus, which would in some instances create more growth. So it's one of those variables that we have to be very, very careful when we read these studies and what inferences we draw from them. I don't think it's any more advantageous physiologically to train a muscle in the stretched position. Um, if you look at sliding filament theory, the actin and the myosin filaments, if they're too far away, they're not able to cross bridge as efficiently, and you can't get as strong of a power stroke. And if you look at the length tension relationship in a muscle, it's this like parabolic curve, and you are stronger slightly in a lengthened position than you are in a heavily contracted position, but you're significantly stronger still, and you produce much more torque in kind of like the middle of the range of movement of any given muscle. And that's because you just have the actin and the myosin are better able to cross bridge. Too far apart, and the actin and the myosin, they can't like hook together and have a decent power stroke. And if they're too far on top of each other, they bunch up and you get a less ideal contraction as well. So anytime people see these videos or see these studies, I think you need to consider what other variables could potentially be at play. And that would be my guess with some of these emphasizing the lengthened position, is they're probably have a slightly longer time under load on a repetition per repetition basis, which creates more time under load on the set, and the greater time under load creates more metabolic stress, which drives more hypertrophy. But without actually being able to see the study performed, would just guess that's probably what happened.
Yeah, well said. That's the problem with all scientific studies. I'll try and rehash the same point you made, Jerome, but just in a slightly different way in case people didn't understand.
Sure.
So what Jerome's pointing out is the studies seem to show that your calf muscles will grow more in the lengthened position when you train in that lengthened position. The problem is they're not standardizing the cadence in that portion. So are they doing, for example, 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down in that lengthened position, then doing the same in the full repetition for the calf raise? Or is it they're doing 3 seconds for the shorter portion of the movement and 6 seconds for the long portion of the movement, or something like that?
Yep.
So accounting for the full time under load is important. And I think a lot of studies don't measure that. They just get people to do what they think is good, but there's no standardization with technique.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the very obvious issues. So we can't always be perfect, but we can try and time things. I mean, I track my weights, my reps, my sets, my exercises, my time under load, any rest pauses I make, and I standardize my rest periods if I'm doing a rest pause set, for example. That's all you can do. Just focus on getting stronger, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, oh yeah, I'm doing a good job now. But it's a very slow process. Very, very slow process. So.
Patience is a virtue.
Patience is a virtue.
Thank you for putting that far more simply than I did, Jonathan. I appreciate that.
I mean, you literally said what I was going to say, Jerome. So you took the words right out of my mouth.
Sophie was going to take snippets of what we both said, but formulate it in a much more scientific manner with cited references.
Basically, just build those gains and make progress. Really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Smashed
All
it.
right. Next question. Sophie, do you train MMA? That's mixed martial arts, by the way. For some reason, you have the look of a fighter. Just wondering.
No, I just beat the shit out of everyone. No, I used to do kickboxing years and years ago. I actually went with my uncle. He gave me a dead leg or a dead arm. I can't remember where he kicked me. So I gave him a dead leg and a dead arm. And he asked me to not come back. So, no. I also don't have time to do anything like that because I can't take the kids with me. I don't know, is that a compliment that I look like a fighter, or is that just like I look like a thug?
I assume it's a compliment.
Well, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, if I think of a woman that does MMA, I think of a fit, strong woman that knows how to look after herself. That's my first thought, so.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like
Everything
I have
I'm not.
a punch if I needed to. But I did debate, like me and Jonathan spoke, months ago now, about me doing potentially like boxing or something like that when I get a bit more leaner. But I can't mess this up. Do you know what I mean? Not with my job. Can't pick up a patient with a black eye.
Yeah.
But no, if I wanted, I don't have the time to. Even if I wanted to, I can't take the kids with me unless I do it in my garden, which isn't the same.
Very good. So Ben asked, some people in the community talk about rising blood sugar on carnivore. What's your experience, and what would you do if yours were to go up? Jerome.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Sean Baker, and there's a question coming up that I think is probably related to this a bit. It depends on how big the rise is, and I would be more concerned about I hate to use the word spike, but I would be more concerned about massive spikes in blood sugar than just a gradual rise. People who are extremely athletic, the liver will release glucagon, which will mobilize free fatty acids, which will be converted into glucose via gluconeogenesis, and your body will keep a little bit of extra glucose in your bloodstream, potentially as fuel to facilitate physical activity if you're extremely physically attractive or physically active, excuse me. Physically attractive doesn't hurt either. Yeah, guess who's sleep deprived? But Sean Baker had, I think, his very first couple of blood tests that he posted, his fasted blood glucose was relatively high. But if you look at the volume and the frequency that the guy trains, this is actually relatively common with athletes. He has a little bit higher of a fasted blood glucose, but his HbA1c is still relatively low, and his fasted insulin is relatively low. So people that are extremely physically active, if you're resistance training, and remember that recovery is a 24-hour-a-day process. And so you might hit the weights really, really hard, and you could potentially have very slightly elevated blood glucose, for maybe a day or two. Nothing that I would think would spark any concerns, but a slight elevation compared to where you're normally at if you had more time off from exercise. The other possibility is, depending on how much protein you ate around a meal, or I suppose to some extent even how much fat you may have eaten, it is possible that some of the food that you consumed is being converted into glucose via gluconeogenesis and is causing an acute blood sugar rise. Again, it shouldn't be a big spike. If you have a decent amount of meat, your blood sugar should not go up to like 200, 220, but it might go from a normal just a little bit under 100 to 120, 130 for a couple of hours. And I wouldn't see that as terribly concerning.
That makes sense. Maddie, what do you think about blood sugar rising on carnivore? Have you noticed that current trend?
She says, couldn't care. I don't actually test my blood sugars anymore. Well, I know because me and Jonathan, we were testing them at the start of my carnivore journey, and I'm no longer pre-diabetic, so that's a bonus. But since then, I haven't actually checked them, to be honest.
Not bad. Maybe I'll answer this question as well.
Yeah, you answer it.
I'd be curious about your thoughts.
Send me a super chat, then I might answer.
You want me to send you a super chat? I can open another window.
No, donate through my website.
Okay.
Into my charity event.
I would hate for a third of the donation to go to YouTube when
Oh my god,
there are better venues.
There are ways to do it, guys. Yeah, I do have a Patreon somewhere. If you type in competition consultant into Patreon, that is a way to give me your coins. Otherwise, I have a website which gives me about 99% of what you do offer me, which is very much appreciated. So yeah, no one's obliged to do that, but it does certainly help me, and it helps me provide for myself and my loved ones, apparently. Oh yeah. All right. So to answer the question, I'm sure Ben's very pissed off right now. Sorry for that, Ben. Yeah. So the main thing about the rising blood sugar is that you notice a trend. So from day 1, for example, to day, say, 60, there's a trend. It's gone up. So in our units, something between maybe 4.5 and 6 in UK units is appropriate for fasting and blood glucose. After meals, it'll rise to whatever it needs to rise to based on your meal, and that's very individual. The goal is to have that blood glucose level drop quickly, because then it means it's gone to the correct tissues and your body's done the hormonal signaling it needs to facilitate the uptake of glucose into your cells as needed, as per requirement of the human body. Now, when people talk about spikes in regards to a blood glucose, it's not quite the fact that it's the area under the curve, and the spikes are actually more significant than what people think. So one analogy you might use is, imagine you're not wearing any shoes and you kick a table, and say you just kick it lightly, just you tap it pretty much. So imagine that's a low blood glucose spike or bump maybe. That doesn't hurt. It feels a bit annoying, but it doesn't hurt. That's the same thing that's happened to your body. It's doing what's needed and required. Now when you have a spike, now imagine you've kicked your toe against a table really, really hard. That's the equivalent of a spike. That really hurts. So in that case, that will then increase the inflammatory properties of your blood. Because when you have too much glucose in your blood, other things happen downstream, which means that the inflammation goes up, the glycation goes up, and your body has to have a more proactive response to that blood glucose spike. So you have the cyclical waves in regards to your meal intake, but then you have spikes when you've had an inappropriate amount of glucose in your blood. How do you know that's inappropriate? Because we always feel crap after we do it, so we should not do it. Now, another test you can use, I think Jerome mentioned, was the HbA1c test. That measures the kind of like the, let's go back a bit, like what's happened to your blood cells over maybe a 3-month period. So if you've been trending upwards every 3-month period, it means your diet might not be effective. But what people notice is their HbA1c might go up when they start the carnivore diet, but that's just their body doing appropriate signaling. But it will get to a point where it starts to stabilize and level out. The only reason for concern are, one, if you have some negative health experiences that match what an elevated blood glucose level would be, or two, where it begins to go up and up and up beyond a natural physiological range. That's my short answer anyway.
Fantastic.
I don't think that made any sense.
No, I think it was quite clear.
Okay, not clear enough. With all the carnivores making videos now, how can anyone keep up? I don't know, Rick. I don't know. Every time I go on, everyone's collaborating. I'm like, I don't have any friends. I don't know other humans.
Well, as long as all of these 24-hour and 10-hour carnivore live streams continue, I feel like everybody should eventually get their turn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I just want to point out that Rick was... that I was the first to have Rick on my YouTube channel live. I want to make that very clear to everyone. I was the first. I was the chosen one.
Yeah, so was Anakin, but he still executed Order 66.
66, that bitch. So if he doesn't know Star Wars, she's not sure what's going on.
You guys are about.
I've already sworn a couple of times on this live stream. I probably shouldn't go into details about Order 66.
That's right. What's your... So please put Q before your question, because I control the stream usually, and the question is very distant from me. So when I read it, it's quite blurry, so I don't want to miss it. So please put a Q first. It makes it easier for me. So why does your blood glucose go up when you work out? I thought your glucose goes down. Jeremy, you might know the answer to this question.
Yeah, and I kind of touch on it, and I saw this question when I answered the last one. So when you're and I've tested my blood glucose right after a workout, and mine goes up significantly after a really hard strength training session. All muscular contraction requires glucose to produce ATP. We are converting glycogen into ATP to facilitate the muscular contraction, and our liver releases glucose into the bloodstream to mobilize a potential fuel source to continue to fuel this anaerobic activity. Um, so it's your body doing what it's supposed to do to give you substrate so you can continue to be physically active should you need to be. That's acutely. Long term, blood glucose should go down. As your muscles get bigger and stronger, they become larger glucose reservoirs. Most of the glucose in our body, we only have 4 to 5 grams in our bloodstream. Most of it's stored in our muscles or in our liver. Something like 300 to 500 grams of glucose is stored in the human body, depending on how big and how muscular somebody is.
I have all of the grams.
Yeah, Jonathan has gram levels. Just thousands and thousands of grams of glucose stored in his muscles, ready to be metabolized at any instance. Acutely, it'll go up as a appropriate and perfectly normal response to intense physical activity. Chronically, long term, it should go down and go down slightly.
Yeah. So Jeremy outlined that perfectly. I wouldn't really add anything to that. When your body anticipates that it will have a higher requirement for blood glucose to drive muscular contractions, it will inevitably raise blood glucose in anticipation for that activity that the body is about to perform. So you'd think, it's quite logical to think, yeah, your blood glucose should go down because you're oxidizing substrate and this and other. But your body has a store, so the body is always dipping in and out of that store. Now, on the point of glycogen muscle stores, it's very hard to deplete muscle glycogen. It never actually really can go to zero because you would die.
Mm-hmm.
So, glycogen is it's a reserve energy that we have to use as and when we need it. But that is always being fueled. Sorry, that is always having in and out, if that makes sense, in terms of 2 different components of body fat, adipose tissue, and glycogen, stored glucose. So your body is always dipping in and out between those two. So it'll rise one, lower one, rise the other. So that's how the glycogen levels are topped up. Your body's very smart, and it doesn't want to be bursting full of glycogen, but it wants to have enough for the activity that you give it. So that's why someone like myself, I notice that I weigh slightly more if I have more days of training in a given week. Because my body's actually storing more glycogen, which then increases inflammation, which then also stores more water. So that's why it doesn't make sense to sort of say, oh, you exercise more, therefore your weight should go down. Yeah, your body fat should go down, but it doesn't mean your weight will go down. So your body has lots of components to it, and they're comprised of different substrates. So it's very tricky when people look at it in a myopic way. So you have to look at things from a physiological level, and that's tough. Most people aren't trained to do that. So I appreciate the question. It's a very sensible one. So thank you.
Yep.
Apologies for that.
Sophie, what are some of the reasons for possible drops of testosterone when going carnivore?
No idea.
Jerome.
Oh, it's been a long time since I've taken college level endocrinology. I'm sure Jonathan will correct me, but my first thought, because I'm a little out of my element here, is just that exercise is still a physical stress on the body. So kind of similar to the glucose paradox that we just talked about recently. I tend to think because exercise is a stress on the body acutely, at least initially, there will be a slight dip as a result of increase in pro-inflammatory hormones while your body recovers from the physical stress that you've imposed on it deliberately. But then chronically, again, or maybe I should use a word like more long-term, testosterone is often upregulated sort of as not necessarily a protective mechanism, but as part of a pathway that's going to help your body hedge against future assaults on it physically. Testosterone being an anabolic and pro muscle building hormone. I'm sure Jonathan can flesh that out much better, though.
Yeah. Usually it could be a deficiency, a chronic stress, like Jerome mentioned. Sometimes chronic stresses can induce deficiency. So, an example of where reducing stress might be to supplement or add in foods rich in B vitamins and a B complex, for example. That will help your body deal with the stress. So, therefore, your body is more receptive to adapt from the future stresses that you inflict upon it. So the first key thing, if you're trying to mitigate testosterone drops, is to make sure you have lower stress and sufficient nutrition. Next thing, I can't remember, we made the video about 2 months ago. So, maybe 3 months ago now, actually.
We'll check it out.
Yeah, Kent Carnivore, I have a video on my YouTube channel, I think it is something like maximizing testosterone on carnivore, that might be a useful one. But yeah, I don't personally notice there's a trend for testosterone levels raising or lowering on a carnivore diet. I think it's just all over the shop. I've not noticed an obvious trend line. So, you know, I mean, if you change your diet, your microbiome's affected. That is in of itself a stress. If you're, like I said, if you're deficient in something, that is a stress. If your life's tough, if you're going carnivore because you've just come off the back end of a serious autoimmune flare, you've done something drastic to your diet, that is a stress. Mm-hmm. So I think the main thing is stress and deficiency. You conquer those two things. Failing that, you speak to your medical practitioner and you work with them to try and get on some prescription grade, pharmacy grade TRT, apparently.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the average male produces something like 7 to 10 milligrams of testosterone a day, and most of that is released very early in the morning.
Yep.
So especially if like sleep is messed up, your circadian rhythm is a little bit off, it's going to affect the time and the amount of testosterone that's released at once. So anytime you get blood work done, it's only a snapshot into that one moment in time. And certain markers like HbA1c are better at showing more long-term trends of what's happening in the body, but some things, especially hormones, can wildly fluctuate within a very, very brief time frame. A bad night's sleep could tank your testosterone levels if you were to get a blood test done the next morning after a bad night's sleep, compared to having a good night's sleep and eating, a species appropriate diet for a couple of days before. So take it with a grain of salt too. If you do get blood work done and do have questions about your testosterone around carnivore.
Yeah, well said. Next question. I believe this gentleman or lady has the same date of birth as me, if that's what the 95 is about. Good. It's weird to think someone's as old as me.
Well, most people, I think, are significantly older than you. You're still a young buck.
Yes.
Sad trombone.
That's the one. What do you suggest is a reasonable glucose level to be on the safe side of things? I think I mentioned this earlier. So fasting, when you've not eaten, 4.5 to 6. When I was in university, when I was in college studying medical science, they gave us the outline that it should be 3 to 5. I strongly disagreed with their position statement and asked them to provide me with evidence to support their claim. They were not able to do so. Nonetheless, I did not score a point on that exam paper.
And I think the units over here are milligrams per deciliter. So
you guys work at like 80 or something. That's what you're sort of.
Yeah, it's America, so everything is measured in like hamburgers per Freedom Eagle per 9mm bullet
per MAGA.
Yeah. So fasted, I would say under 100 milligrams per deciliter most of the time. Some people early in the morning have a kind of a dawning effect where their fasted blood glucose first thing in the morning is a little bit higher. Mine tends to be a little bit higher first thing in the morning. Postprandial after a meal, even if you're carnivore, generally I think they say under 160 for like 60 or 90 minutes after a meal. On carnivore, mine tends to be right around 130 after a decent sized bolus of protein, and that is basically 2 to 3 hours after my meal. It's back down under 100 milligrams per deciliter.
Yeah, mine's probably similar if I was to equate it. Fasting nowadays about 5 to 5.5. That's my range. I think what is probably good is like 4.5 to about 6, somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be outliers on either end of that bracket, of course. Postprandial, maybe 7.5 to 9, but it drops down quite quickly. So that's what's important, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Jerome, how do you build such impressive glutes?
Yeah, I did a business Facebook post about this. You see a lot of people doing glute bridges. Glute bridges are really popular, but they're not a great glute exercise. In my opinion, the best glute exercise is probably a very intensely performed leg press. If you're able to safely generate enough intensity, the glutes, you may not feel it in the moment. We tend to feel it in our quads, but the glutes are the prime movers in that movement. If you can't do a leg press, any kind of a squat for the most part is going to be a glute builder. The problem with something like a glute bridge is you're loading the glutes in a position of what's called active insufficiency. You are heavily loading the glutes when they are near or fully contracted. And again, that's causing the actin and the myosin to be too bunched up on top of each other. And it's creating a cramping sensation that a lot of people mistake for thinking that they're adequately hitting that muscle group. When in actuality, you're just imposing a bit of a cramp and it's hurting a little bit and you think it's providing a better overload. So a good quality leg press, I think, is probably the best glute building exercise. Otherwise, if you can do a decent hip hinging movement, like a lower back hyperextension, depending on how you have the bench set, a stiff-legged deadlift, some kind of deadlift variation that could be performed safely is going to function glutes heavily. What do you think?
I think you're frozen, Jerome, so I'm just gonna... Oh, there we are. Okay. What do I think?
Okay.
I think that when training glutes, there's 2 ways we can go about it, or 2 optimal movements. I'm talking about building the glute muscles to the maximum level with the best bang for your buck. So a leg press with maybe not super high stance, but relatively high. Mm-hmm. Just find a stance in terms of width that is wide enough for you to get good depth without rounding your lower back and doing what I dread that other people could do. You have to reach a high level of intensity, like Jerome mentioned. You'll feel it more in your quads to begin with. You can push through your heels if you want to maximize glute activity. It seems to be that when you... There's a better way to describe this, but if you push through your toes, your quads will be more activated. If you push through your heels, your glutes will be more activated. Now my second movement, funny enough, it's not a deadlift, but it is a hip hinge, if it were. So it would probably be almost like a glute hyperextension or glute ham raise kind of exercise.
Yep.
I think that's probably your best bet. You think about the way the glute muscle fibers tie in terms of origin to insertion. It seems to make sense that you're going to want to contract them in that kind of way, not like an opposing kind of way. You can load that exercise safely. You can add weights. You can add a band. You can hold onto a band, a chain around your neck or something. Just be careful with that one. And yeah, I think you can reach a good level of intensity with that one safely. You can change your feet position to maximize what area of the glutes you'll be targeting. I find with most exercises, it's not about going really, really wide or really, really narrow. It's somewhere in the middle for most things, where your body is strongest. And that's how you're going to get the most amount of force, especially when it comes to more isolation type exercises as that anyway. So for the most part, neutral stances, push through the right part of the muscle. It might help to actually feel your glutes when you're doing it. So if you can put your hands on your glutes safely and stay in a seat, stay in position, whatever it is, that'll help you improve your feeling, if that makes sense. Imagine you're trying to almost like imagine you're trying to bring the back of your knee up towards the top of your glute, something like that. So there's lots of cues you can implement. So there's no need to rush it. Glutes aren't an exercise you have to rush training at all. Take your time. It's a long muscle group, so you can actually probably get quite good time to tension and probably quite a good slow, steady cadence on it, I think.
Glutes also function of the glutes due to their attachment points. So if you're doing, some kind of compound leg pressing or squat type movements, some kind of hip hinging movements, and doing like a thigh or hip abduction, pulling your knees apart, you're addressing all the functions of the glutes. And if you're able to do those with enough intensity by fulfilling all of the roles of that muscle, you're going to give it probably about as good of a stimulus as you're capable of doing.
Perfect. Yeah, Kent Carnivore just said thank you. So Kent Carnivore is one of 3 other YouTubers that has a more potent, powerful YouTube channel than I do within the United Kingdom. So he's someone I highly admire and respect for his hard work and dedication towards this platform and this cause. While saying that, I also want to demolish him and for me to have more subscribers than him.
I was going to say that's a very polite and professional way to say that you're jealous.
Yeah. he deserves it though. You can tell when you watch his videos, they're well made. So awesome. It's not really a competition, but I think we started around a similar time. Right. So you kind of, it's like a friendly competition. It's good to try and have some sort of rivalry. My channels are completely different. I talk to a camera about stuff and train and talk about gym stuff and whatever. His channel is more about getting people onto the carnivore diet itself. So we're at different stages in terms of what we're trying to approach people with the content. But it's cool stuff. If you have not subscribed to Kent Carnivore already, guys, I recommend that you do. He does put out useful information.
Well, I'm glad it's not a competition because you're the composition consultant, not the competition consultant.
What do you mean by that?
You just want to compete with everybody and be better than them.
I was a bit late to that one.
You'll have to forgive the dad jokes. It's all I have going for me right now.
It works. It's right, Jim. I won't keep you much longer. You can go for a wee soon.
That's much appreciated. Yeah, at my age, my prostate is shot, so I'm basically just wearing adult diapers right now.
So if you won't be back, guys, so if you missed her and you want to watch her again, just rewind back in the video and you'll be able to see her and hear her opinions and thoughts and things. Pardon me. Sorry, guys. I don't usually eat on camera, but if I don't eat, I'm going to lose a lot of weight, and I don't really want to do that. Is it true your walking speed can predict your lifespan? I've heard that most of my life, and always wondered if more research has been done on this.
I was heavily anticipating Jonathan. My degree is in kinesiology, and Jonathan always colloquially refers to it as a degree in walking. So I was anticipating, the bullshit coming from you. Jerome, you have a degree in walking. What do you think?
Actually, me.
Yeah.
Saved me the effort and breathing.
I haven't seen that, although I suppose in terms of an association, it sort of makes sense, right? The healthier people could probably walk faster than unhealthy people. I've never heard that before, though. So I'd be curious who's doing these studies.
I don't know how you're going to measure someone's walking speed over a period of 80 years. But yeah. I think being physically fit, physically active is useful. At the same time, I wouldn't recommend to someone to walk all day, every day. I don't know how helpful that's going to be. So, yeah. Rick's got good speed. I've got quite slow speed. I'm probably, right now, about 60% speed of the average human being. So, but I get to take in the fresh air for much longer. Brilliant. Oh. Actually, before I get to that, Nicole said squats for glutes.
Squats. Yep. With a
Which feint was that?
SK and a W. Squats.
Squats. That's the one.
Yes, squats are great if you can do them safely and overload the musculature without compromising on safety. Then
Form.
yeah,
Form.
squats can be excellent.
I agree. It's just very tricky. There's a reason why Jerome and I don't often recommend many free weight exercises, because if we are talking to someone online and explaining how to do something, we cannot see them doing it. We can't guide them through it, and in most cases people get it wrong. I won't say it here, but I know people that really, really mess up their squats, and I've told them how to do it at the start, and they've not taken on board the information. So for me, it's easy to say to someone, look, you can still get the same growth, same kind of stimulus from another movement. It'll be safer. You'll be able to increase the load with much more sustainable fashion, I think. But yeah, squats are good and they do work. So just do them right. And thank you for the kind words, Susie. I appreciate you watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Have you ever heard of someone that genuinely can't build muscle, even if they're training with good form, decent volume and frequency? Yeah, Jerome.
Can't. I would say barring some chronic disease that is very muscle wasting, I would say no, because it's just a number of building muscle is it's an adaptation that's regulated by a number of processes. I would say there's a surprisingly large number of individuals that do a good amount of training and might even have their diet on point that don't seem to build any muscle. And those types of people tend to fall through the mainstream exercise recommendations and kind of fall into the high intensity training camp sort of as a last resort. But you would be shocked sometimes at how little exercise volume and frequency some people can tolerate. So I have some people in my studio that only come in once every other week, every 14 days to do 5 or 6 total sets for their workout. And it wasn't until I got them down to that point that they continued to make progress and have size and strength increases. I've shown a testimonial of a former client of mine that I trained that was only doing 6 sets every 10 to 14 days. And it took getting him down to that point for him to continue to make progress. In Body by Science, John Little gives a number of anecdotes of people at his Nautilus training studio called Nautilus North up in Canada, where he has a bod pod so he can test people's body composition. And he has something like 95% of the people that did this experiment were able to build muscle and lose fat at the same time, doing only 3 sets once a week. But there was a smaller subset of that same population that had to do even less frequently. They could only do 3 sets or 2 sets in some cases every 3 weeks in order to build just a slight amount of muscle. So for any genetically mediated trait, there's a broad spectrum of expression that for most people resembles a bell curve. And just as most people in terms of like skin color or height fall into that meaty part in the middle, and there's some genetically endowed people on the right side of the bell curve that can seemingly grow a 20-inch pair of biceps just by wiping their ass, it stands to reason that there's people on the other side of that spectrum that have to extremely cautiously regulate intensity, volume, and frequency to see the slightest of gains. I have a 15-year-old in my studio that comes in now probably every other week, sometimes every 3rd week. And it took months before we would start to see the slightest bit of progress in him. And he's something like 6'3", 6'4", and not even 150 pounds. And it took a lot of work to just barely get that needle moving just a little bit to build some size and strength in him. So again, I apologize, Jonathan. I'm trying to give you time in case you're still eating. Just as there are some people that respond very, very well to exercise, I think everybody has the potential, barring some chronic disease, to build some degree of muscle, some size and strength increase. But at the same time, for some individuals, that amount is going to have to be very, very, very closely regulated, very, very infrequent, very limited exercise volume, and possibly even back off the intensity just a little bit, not necessarily even go to momentary muscular failure. What do you think?
Yeah, the people that I notice that commonly say I'm a hard gainer. I know Kent Carnival is not saying this, but it's like people say I'm a hard gainer. I've tried everything, but I can't gain muscle. I mean, usually it means that they're not disciplined enough. Now that doesn't mean you're going to the gym, say, for 3 months straight, then eating crappy, not eating enough food. You're going out every night. You know, you're playing Xbox till 2 in the morning. That's not being disciplined, guys. If you want to achieve a goal, you have to make sure your actions are representative of that goal. You have to set objectives and specific aims to reach that goal. Otherwise, you will not achieve it. So what you might be doing is you'll be saying, okay, I have a score sheet of, say, 1 to 10, 10 being optimal. I'm sleeping well. I'm eating enough protein, enough fat. I'm staying on top of my meal timing, so you're getting meals in when you are hungry. Your training is effective. You're progressively overloading. You're not rushing weights in the gym. You're minimizing external factors such as stress. You know, things like that. You're well hydrated. Then when you've got all those key points in, then you can start to think, why have I not booked in yet with the composition consultant at compositionconsultant.com? Would you say it's a fair kind of comment to make?
A lot of the people line and consultation point aside, that's an excellent point. Most people I know, like everybody thinks they train hard. Jonathan would support this, but like to really train hard, you almost need someone who's been there many times to kind of put you through a workout to show you what hard training is. You'll know when your body is done. If you've done a workout, you know, if you finish your workout and you feel like you could do a couple more sets for whatever body part, you probably didn't push hard enough unless you have some injury or some kind of limiting factor that prohibits you from training that hard. So yeah, this last study I've seen said most people have about 5 reps in reserve, on average. You know, they think they hit failure, they think they've trained hard, and they really have a lot more in the tank than they actually do, or than they think they do.
Yeah, we can provide a case study as well, and I don't think you'd mind us saying this, but Cole is someone. He's a fellow. Well, he's ketogenic bodybuilder, maybe carnivore bodybuilder as well, I guess. Sometimes, and myself and Mark Ennis, we're both carnivore coaches. We're both bodybuilders as well. I think he's competing men physique. I'm in bodybuilding. We're saying to him, look, Cole, we see your plans every day, and they always say, at one point they're saying 35, 40 sets per workout. Why is it that his genetics are so unidentical, so dissimilar to mine, that he needs to do 4 times more volume than what I do? Something's wrong here. Now he's on the far end of the high volume spectrum. I don't think there's actually outliers out there that need to do that. Now there's more than one way to skin a cat, and you can achieve that that goal of, you know, lots of muscle mass either way. But we're trying to do the minimum amount possible. Training is enjoyable. We're not doing the minimum amount possible because we don't enjoy it. We want to get the most out of the least. Therefore, we can scale up our volume or other factors as needed to build muscle. So Jerome and I have a framework of ideas that we think definitely promote maximum muscle building. The problem is, if I make that video for you guys, it will just raise more questions because it isn't prescriptive. So that's why we're really explaining the consultation is important. What you're currently doing and what you're currently doing that's wrong. I can look at training footage. Jerome can as well. You can post it to us here. Send it to my Google Drive and I can look at that. And from there we can see, okay, your training isn't quite optimal. This is the problem. You know, we try to fine tune every lever that we can. And I don't think I've ever met anyone in my life that trains, eats and sleeps perfectly, ever. So there's something you're not optimizing. So it might be that maybe you've got, you know, 95% of it okay with training and diet, but you haven't got 100% with the sleep. Maybe the sleep is what's limiting your growth. Now, what might be a useful tool for you to use is to look at your fat-free mass index calculator online. The idea is that you plug in some details about yourself that you may or may not know regarding your body composition, height, weight, things like that. then that'll give you an indication of how far off your natural limit you might be. It might be that you're just on the skinnier side, because people are sometimes skinny. That's just the way they are. Nothing wrong with that. It just means your goals have to align with what is achievable. Again, going back to the SMART achievable goals. So yeah, I mean, look at all those things. Perhaps Jerome and I will make this video at some point, because I keep getting asked about training. And but the thing is, if we make this video, we're not going to be then spending 2 hours of you in the YouTube comment section trying to work out what you need to do. We can't do that in the comment section, guys. So that's part of the problem with some of the videos I make. It's slightly controversial, but it's not that helpful. But we can tell you what things you need to look at. Then if you don't want to buy a consultation, that's completely fine. We've given you the framework that you need. Then from there, refine, tweak what you can and can't do, and work from there.
And Jonathan and I are both very rigid when it comes to principles, but I think we're both in agreement that you don't want to be dogmatic when it comes to programs. You focus on principles, not programs, because if you're constantly inculcated in the belief that you need to be doing an exact number of sets or reps or set up your workout routine in one exact way, but you're missing the bigger picture of intensity, volume, frequency, sleep, diet, all of these other factors, no wonder you're not getting the results. So if you listen carefully to almost everything that Jonathan and I say, it's always stemming from the same basic principles, and then we are elaborating based on our experience extrapolations of those principles into a theoretical framework of what we think works best for any particular scenario. So instead of picking apart some of the differences with what we say sometimes when they're answering these questions, start focusing on what's really in common here: intensity, volume, frequency, species appropriate diet, quality rest, 5 health hacks that Jonathan and Bart promote. And if you're nailing those things, you are further ahead in the strength training game than 99% of people that are going to set foot into this arena.
Completely, yeah. What was this that's arrived? Incredible.
It's probably somebody wanting a delayed response to that question, Ben's question about blood glucose.
That's it, yeah. Well, shout out to Patricia. Thank you very much for your $2, I think that's dollars.
Yep.
Appreciate that. It does help. It actually does help, guys. If any of you would want to donate some money, please do. I very willingly take it. I feel like I earn donations, but like I said, they're not mandatory. No one's obliged to give me money. After all, it's a free YouTube platform. Anything that I do offer, which is off air, is obviously paid for. But yeah, anything I get through this is extra, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Right, how do I operate this screen? So I got a touch screen, Jerome.
Sure.
I can touch the screen on my laptop, and things that I press work. Brilliant. Problem is I can't reach it.
Do you have like a stylus for like a tablet to extend your reach by 4 or 5 inches? Yeah, obviously this is okay. Will that work?
No, I need like a pen that long.
Oh, okay.
That's how far it is. So yeah, it's about that far.
Have you ever seen Futurama? The professor has the thing longer. Hopefully someone in the audience gets that reference, and he uses it to like poke things. It's a really long finger that he just points and pokes things with.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, cheers, Ben. You always ask really useful questions. I appreciate that. I might make some clips out of this video today because it's quite fun. Yeah, I'll have Jerome all like edited out with sound effects and.
Yeah, please do. Just get my tired, ugly mug off of the screen.
I'll smooth out his face a little bit and do some editing.
Yeah, put anything else up instead of my face.
What's good, Declan? How's it going? Jerome is an expert in health and fitness.
So is Jonathan.
I'm not doing very well at it, am I?
You're doing fantastic. What are you talking about?
I haven't optimized my health outcomes. Yet.
You are in the process of optimizing. As you so eloquently put it before, you've never met anybody that's had their diet, their sleep, their everything perfectly dialed in. So yeah, no one in that regard has fully optimized their health. Have you done a video on that guy that's spending like $6 or
Not
$10
yet.
million a year? Or
I made a video that's 45 minutes long.
and like you sent me his
Then I had
workout
to-
program, but have you looked at his diet?
Weird. Yeah, I did it on part of his diet. Rubbish. I'm deficient in all these things. How can I get my blood levels to show or suggest that I'm not deficient? That's basically what we're trying to achieve.
Just get a couple of blood transfusions. That's probably the fastest way to do it.
All right, I have to press some buttons.
I'm going to buy you a really long stylus. It's going to be
The thing is, I use a circular green screen that's really big behind me,
yeah.
and it attaches to the back of my chair, so it means I can make it a bit more visually snazzy, which is what people might like for some reason. I don't know. The problem is it's really hard to move forward and back without impacting on the light that hits the back chair.
Gotcha.
Now, if I set too close, so the microphone, I've just moved it 14.5 inches from my mouth. Now I've got not enough space where my knees are to extend my legs, so it's just awkward. Just the way my desk is just awkward.
Yeah.
I've just got a standard L-shaped desk. Right. Yeah, very well said. Sorry, what were you going to say, Jerome?
I was going to say I'm trying to channel my Dr. Chafee now by holding a pen and gesturing with my hand while I talk. 'Cause he's always
He
kinda
writes
holding-
lots of notes down.
Yeah.
One thing, people that are watching this right now, the one thing that you'll notice with the smartest people is they listen with both ears and talk with one mouth. And they talk with the right frequency relative to the audience that they have around them. If there are people that are in the room that are smarter than them, you'll notice that they talk less. They have something to gain from them. And I think that's the way you should always be. So you notice when I'm on Bart's live, I shut up because I want to learn from him.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I learn something from Jerome as well. So sometimes I'm quiet here.
I'm going to, when we get offline, I'm going to ask you if you were going where I thought you were going when you started saying that. I don't want to say anything on stream.
All right. Yeah, Ben's after the critiques now, so we're going to get straight to stop winding you all up with our ramble. Carnival Muscle Ramblings live Q&A, episode number 43. Excellent. All right. Can you see it?
I can.
Wow.
There we go.
Strong, Maddie.
Look at that. I think that's 2.5.
Thank you so
I think.
much. Oh, where's the other one? Oh. Whoa, muscle Maddie. Oh. Oh, thank you. Whoa. Woo.
That's really wholesome.
Thoughts?
Perfect form. 10 out of 10.
So the weight, the load used was 2.3 kilos. She did, I'd consider it 2 dynamic repetitions with movement during the lift. And she currently weighs in at an impressive 12 kilograms. Here she is. Hi.
Hi.
Guys, you can see my other studio. Look, there's my other studio there as well.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's how much room I've got. And I've got the most amount of room as well in that bedroom. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do.
So,
Thoughts on the
Jerome, would you like to give
video?
Maddie some critiques?
Sure.
Yes.
Awesome job. You did great. I think you made Jonathan and Mom very proud. You've made me very proud of you. Keep up the good work.
Very good. Yeah, I thought overall pretty good. The load was pretty good for the body weight. I mean, I'm trying to think now. If I did a goblet squat with about, say, 15-20% of my body weight, what would that be? Like
So you're, what, 100?
13, 112?
Yeah.
like 15 kilos or something.
Right around.
Yeah,
So
it's not too bad.
That's converting. That's like a 600-pound goblet squat.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
If you
you're right.
equate
I'll have to convert that into a, what'd you call it? Some measurement per like megas here in the States.
Yeah.
So that sounds about right.
Yeah. Good job, Maddie. She's on the what do you call it? The GOMAD. What's that diet? The milk and squats routine. The Hatfield program. You've heard it, like milk and squats or whatever.
Oh,
The
alright.
20 rep squat program.
Oh, awesome.
So you drink a gallon of milk. Yeah, that's it. A gallon of milk a day plus squats.
Really? That sounds awful.
Sounds right. If you tolerate
Yeah,
dairy.
that's fine, yeah.
That's,
And cream.
you don't like have the whole gallon and then start doing squats, do you? 'Cause
No, I
Oh,
love
God.
that gallon of milk. Jesus Christ.
I mean, if you can do the squats first and then like nurse the milk over the rest of the day, I guess I would
I could
prefer
do
to
that.
do
Yeah,
it
I
that
could
way.
do that. Yeah.
Well, let's look at the other video that I got posted. So this is from Joff from Australia. So I'm going to leave some background information about this video. So he said that he's trying to build strength and muscle in his chest, shoulder, tricep kind of region. He's had issues recently with his shoulders and his joints in general. He is predominantly a power lifter type or style athlete. So that's the context we have, of course. So we're going to watch this now, Jerome and I, and Sophie and Maddie, and critique.
Yep. Mhm.
Thoughts?
I like the first rep largely starting from the bottom of the range of movement, especially once people start adding weight to things like dips. It's very easy for people to start at the top, get to the bottom on the first rep, have an oh shit moment, and then like realize they can't quite go as far. If shoulder issues are a thing, I would lean away from doing dips a little bit. As deep as people tend to get them, you're really putting the chest in a position of passive insufficiency, and you're putting a lot of pressure on the rear delt by bottoming out a dip. If you do want to do dips and you want it to be a little bit more chest oriented, I would keep a body positioning that's a little bit closer to how Vince Garanda did dips, where his body was almost like banana shaped. His feet were kind of pointing forward, and that'll cause your center of gravity to tilt forward and keep more of the overload on the chest. He had a bit of a neutral position, which is actually, I like that more than how you see most people do dips. Most people do dips, they kind of pull their feet back in them. That tilts you more upright and makes it far more tricep and shoulder focused. So for him, I probably wouldn't, I would try and standardize the cadence a little bit. I wouldn't go quite as I wouldn't fully lock out at the top. I wouldn't go quite as high as he did. You want to keep some of that tension on the chest. Point your feet forward. If you have to look up pictures of how Vince Garanda did dips, he almost had like a banana shape. Your toes are pointing forward. It's the weirdest thing, but it does make your torso lean more forward in a dip. But otherwise, I saw some things I really liked in there. So what did you guys see?
What do you think, Sophie?
Pretty good. Very impressive. I don't really have anything else to add.
Yeah, I'm glad Jerome said about the feet positioning. That was the most, other than the snap action happening in the shoulder, where he's not slowing down the bottom portion when he's locking out his reps and not focusing on the constant up down. You never stop at the long or short end. You just phase it in and out like a piston sort of thing. But yeah, I might actually tuck my knees upwards towards my midsection You can even cross your legs, so reduce the swinging, reduce the possibility that gravity will decenter itself, if that makes sense. I think you have more reps in the tank, but personally, I'd just change the exercise if that's the issue. I wouldn't be doing it over and over again if it's causing shoulder pain. If you are adamant on doing it, just limit the range of motion, slow down the reps a little bit. That's it really.
I'd also be curious what the rest of his routine looks like. I know he's into powerlifting, and there's videos on his channel that I've watched of him doing deadlifts. So assuming this is happening on like a chest day, to where he's probably getting his benching in, heavy doubles, heavy triples, and then doing accessory work to try and bring up some of these other muscle groups a little bit. I would imagine for the accessory work, you'd probably see a little bit more simpler isolation exercises for chest, triceps, or maybe working more of certain positions of the bench. But I don't know. Do the West Side barbell guys use a lot of dips? I didn't think that was really not that he follows West Side protocol, but I guess I was thinking if I was doing a powerlifting routine, unless I really, really liked dips, I don't think I would incorporate them into my training routine.
So this is bizarre. So I've never got on well with dips at all. I've always found it's irrespective of how I manipulate form. Now, yes, when I manipulate form, it does improve any kind of reduce any joint pain I do get, but I still get pain regardless. It still clicks. It still hurts.
Yeah.
I find the bars are never in the right position, so they're always either too narrow or too wide, and also not angled the correct way.
Yep.
In nearly all circumstances. Over here, we don't have great gyms like a lot of the guys do in the US, so we're probably even more limited than some people. I found more benefit from using a similar piece of equipment, a converging chest press, like a decline or a flat version of that.
Yep.
That achieves the same thing whilst limiting the amount of stability that you have to incorporate in doing a dip. Now, my brother, for example, he's got short little dinosaur arms, so he's really good at dips. He can add like a 40 kilo chain of plates to him, and he's cracking away. He loves it.
Yeah.
I can't do that. Got long arms, long legs, so
they're really hard to find. But some gyms will have like a V-shaped dip station.
The Gironda station or Gironda dips.
Yep, and the advantage to that is you can find whatever width best suits your body and your biomechanics. The problem is most of those neutral grips are fairly standardized, and to me they're way too wide. And like I have more broad shoulders than most guys, not as broad as yours.
No.
But putting your arms too far out does put more strain on the shoulder. And yeah, similarly, maybe I've also never liked dips too much because I seem to get, it just doesn't feel right in my shoulders when I'm doing dips, and maybe he's a little bit different. But yeah, a good V bar, if you can find one for dips, is significantly better than parallel bars.
What you said about dips and the shoulders and everything stabilizing and stuff makes me think about one of Ben Yanes' posts on Instagram. He's always talking about stabilizing the passive or still part of the body where it's in contact with where the resistance is being pushed against. So if you're doing a tricep extension, you might use a butterfly rope to keep your elbow in a fixed position. That's in a case where you don't have a machine which has a fixed elbow position, a fixed bicep curl elbow position, a fixed chest position for your mid-back. Now, sometimes there's an issue with these because you can't retract your scapula enough to get maximum stretch in the chest, so in the pec tendon. Now, it's not imperative to do that, but if you train throughout a whole full range of motion, you're less likely to get injured. Reason being, you're training your strength and tendons to adapt to that. Now, as soon as you start doing half reps, completely isometric workouts, you're limiting the stretch reflex, so you will never actually adapt in that kind of way. So you need the full range of motion. At the same time, full range of motion under appropriate load, safe execution, controlled static, eccentric, concentric, whatever you're doing.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, eccentric work can be especially beneficial for tendons, and I think it's your tendons are especially high, I think, in lysine and proline, and they almost have like a wave pattern to them. And by stretching them out, you're increasing the space between them, which can then be, for better or worse words, kind of filled in with dietary amino acids to help strengthen and build up this tendon. There will still be some positive adaptation as a result of strength training, even if it's isometrically. But I agree, if increasing tendon strength is a concern for an exercise or for a movement or for some kind of health or longevity. Like I have a client with a torn rotator cuff, so we do solely eccentric loading with internal and external rotation of the shoulder to try and strengthen a rotator cuff. But I forget where I was going with that. If long-term functionality is a concern, then yeah, you want fairly close to full range of movement on most exercises.
Yeah.
Hi.
There's Jerome.
In 720p.
Guys, what do you think? 1080p? Should I 1080p this bitch or what? Is it worth the additional $20 a month?
I was going to say, for Jonathan to do that with StreamYard's pricing plan is an additional, I think almost 15 pounds or so a month, right? Right around.
It's not a lot when you think about it, the amount I do live with people. However, when you top that on top of the fact, when you cap that onto the top of the fact that YouTube now charges an extra £1 more for us over here, it's now $12.99 rather than $11.99. No, I originally started about $4.99 for YouTube Premium. Canva, the thumbnail making app, £12, like $15 a month. My video editing studio, $50, $60 a year. What else do I use? Laptop, $900. Microphone, $500. Green screens, plural, $40, $50. Acoustic panels, $70. Webcam, $180. Lavaliers, $300 plus the Go, another $300.
And I'm laughing because I know you've gone through probably about a half a dozen or so webcams.
Yeah, this one's okay now. This one does something. You can see my face, so that's okay. Well, I think that's about it, really. But yeah.
There we go.
That's better. You're not bad.
Balance is restored.
I'm on the left today.
That's okay. We don't have the icons up, so it's not too terribly important that we're under the appropriate logos.
Yeah. I did consider this at the start. I was going to actually add them in, but then I thought, well, if Sophie's hopping on, that's going to really mess things up.
Yeah, and I hopped on super late. I apologize again for that.
I wouldn't stress about it because I only got here about 3 minutes prior to the meeting. All right. Would you reckon should you answer one more question or should we call it a day?
If there is one, sure.
I think there might be one. It's got a Q next to it. So this is the last question for this week. Carnival Muscle Ramblings live segment number 43. The Ultimate Carnival Bodybuilding live Q&A. Yep. No. Sometimes after I work out and I eat a meal, I feel sleepy. Do you know why that's occurring sometimes? Yeah. You've probably eaten too much. Your body's not facilitating the uptake of glucose into your cells quick enough. Therefore, the glucose in your bloodstream, and it's elevated, then it will get a massive drop. Then you'll feel sluggish because glucagon there has to rise, which will then, in turn, cause a rise and frequent dip after the fact of having the bolus of food. What you might try doing is changing up your meal timing, your meal frequency, the size of that meal, perhaps the contents of the meal as well. I notice if I have like a lot of yogurt sometimes with some whey protein, then I might have a slightly larger bump in glucose in the blood from gluconeogenesis. But it's not a massive deal. It's just a slight thing I notice occasionally. So, Joe, what do you think?
I couldn't add anything to what you said, but looking at it from a slightly different point of view, if that's happening independent of you having the meal or not, if you're getting really, really tired just after your workouts, I would be curious if you're a little bit like thinner of a lad or if you're a little bit more hench. In my experience, guys that have a little bit more fast twitch muscle fibers that tend to be a little bit more muscular. I think there's something about fast twitch fibers that create a deeper momentary degree of fatigue after a workout, assuming you can stimulate them to where sometimes you might finish a workout and feel like you just really, really need a nap. Jonathan, do you ever have that at all? Get a good workout in and you're like, God, I just need to sleep for like 60 minutes?
No, I mean, I used to be like that when I was younger, when I was much healthier. I think now when I train, it is always a burden to my body, it is always a stress to my body.
Sure.
Therefore, cortisol is elevated and remains elevated. Now, that's why I do the red light therapy sometimes after the gym. I'll close my curtains in my bedroom, perhaps around 11, 12 o'clock in like midday sort of time, and I just put my red light on, and that seems to calm me down a bit. But otherwise, yeah, it would make me sleepy, so I have to actively try to be sleepy nowadays. But
Gotcha.
yeah, sometimes your body is pretty clever at telling you what to do. I just rely on that signal and rest for a bit.
Yep.
One thing as well, which is probably more impactful than what many people would believe, is to identify how you actually feel after the workout, whether that be positive or negative emotionally. If you leave workout, you feel drained, negative, you don't feel like you've achieved something, you just feel like you've done a lot of work and it was stressful, perhaps rejig your training program. That tells me that you've got a negative dopamine response to the workout, which means your body's not enjoying you doing it. Your body's not rewarding you for doing it. It's saying, that was horrible. So therefore you've not got that, oh, that felt good, I'm going to keep doing that signal. So that's something to look at as well. What a brilliant selection of answers there. Cheers, Jerome.
Thank you.
Any chance you could critique Luke trying to
Lift the X-Wing out of the swamp on Dagobah.
That's a while back, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a lot to critique. Jonathan and I are not too we're not
Jerome, can you
force
pull it up?
experts. I could try. Did I have the capacity to?
You have administrative powers on my YouTube channel for some reason.
Oh, excellent! How did that happen?
Someone forced my hand.
Oh, where is it? I'm seeing other Star Wars clips, but that one doesn't. I'm not sure that.
You can tell how much I like these live videos, guys, by how long I actually persist to sit down and actually spend time with whoever I'm talking with. Usually I'm knackered, but it takes my mind off things, the pain and that, so it's quite enjoyable. I always look forward to speaking to Jerome. Makes me happy sometimes.
I would be more inclined to critique Luke running around the swamp with Yoda on his back when he's doing flips and doing all that training and push-ups upside down and stuff like that than I would him using the Force to lift the X-Wing.
Yeah. Do we miss a question from Mike about squats?
Oh, we did. He had something about slow and controlled or explosive on squats.
I remember seeing the word explosive somewhere.
There it
That's
is.
the one. So regarding squats, slow burn and low weight, or should I keep more explosive reps? Jerome, what do you think about explosive reps?
I would say it depends on your goal. If you want to get better at doing squats, or if you want to squat as much as you can, train explosively. If you're just trying to build bigger, stronger legs, I would lift at a controlled cadence, probably at least 2 to 3 seconds or so in each direction. I tend to favor really, really super slow movements, but I don't think it's any more advantageous going excruciatingly slow compared to like 2 to 5 seconds in each direction. to me at that point, it's a horse apiece. I'm generally not in favor of explosive movements due to the lack of control that you have. And with a lack of control comes a greater propensity towards breaking form, which would increase your risk of injury significantly. But if you are if you're a strength athlete, if you're a power lifter, if you're trying to have the biggest squat you can, you have to lift explosively. You need to control that negative and you need to lift explosively. So there's a context to that.
Extremely context specific. I think he's trying to build muscle based on what I've kind of seen him write stuff before. Like, that's my guess. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I imagine that's the case too. I thought I should kind of flesh out what I think both sides of that answer are.
Yeah, it's good. The attention to detail is always important because people might misunderstand that. You have to say, well, it depends what goal you have. I sound in a similar sort of viewpoint to Jerome. I think the only problem with doing a slow burn, if that means you're doing like really long time to load or extended cadence in either direction, the issue of that is if you get progressively stronger and you're doing a compound movement such as a squat, bent over row, shoulder press, anything which is somewhat more risky than a exercise machine, for example, like a leg press or a hack squat, something which you can't just rack whenever, basically. If you notice you pick up more fatigue in, for example, your lower back when you're doing a really slow squat, you might get to a point in the movement where it's so slow that it barely moves. Then you have to throw the weight off you. So it might be more advantageous to do a leg press or another sort of squatting movement that's under a guided kind of lever. That might be more safe. So you'll notice a common theme here. It's about safe training where you can overload whilst using the lowest amount of weight. Now, it's quite a paradoxical kind of idea. Like, we're suggesting to you to use the least amount of weight but progress the weight the most. So they're different things. You want the least amount of weight so you've got a large ceiling to improve upon. So you'll never be too strong. Your injury risk is always going to be lower if you're using a lesser weight or load. But you still want to increase that given load to underpin the idea, or what's the word? Maybe point to the fact that you've improved upon your muscle growth. Stronger muscles usually a bigger muscle in most cases. So that's your metric, that's your measurement. I think we've hashed that one out quite well.
Yeah.
Again, incredible. Yeah, cheers, Ben. Thanks for popping over. Appreciate the questions. You might be late. Yeah, you might be late. It's quite late where you are, Lambs, but you don't sleep. I forgot about that.
A little bit.
Thanks, yeah. I'm trying to get stronger, but not necessarily bigger lower body.
The two correlate very, very closely. Now, there is a skill component that contributes to strength in any movement, any particular movement at all. There's a neuromuscular component. So the more you practice the skill, the better you'll get at it. So if you're just looking to build leg strength, you're a pretty lean guy anyways. I would still keep your workouts the same, but if you wanted to be a little bit bigger, then I would try and use diet as more of a lever in that regard than necessarily manipulating anything with your workout. I tend to think the workout should always be focused on trying to get the maximal stimulus, and there's, for the most part, not really a way to work out mostly for strength or mostly for hypertrophy. You're hitting both quite strongly with a properly conducted workout, and then you can have some influence over that with diet.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah, lower back would hurt. Form or the glutes. Send in a video, Mike. We'll have a look. There we go.
Yeah.
I might think it's a bit of both. So your form might be suffering because your glutes are weaker. That's my guess based on what I usually see. But I could be completely wrong. So that's why we want to look at what you're doing.
It could just be that the muscles of your lower back, the whole erector spinae muscle group is relatively small compared to especially the glutes, the quads, the hams. And like when I was squatting, I was never an excellent squatter. I was doing 405 for reps or for sets of 6. But I stopped squatting because it was too hard for me to keep my torso properly upright.
Aligned. Yeah.
Yeah, properly aligned would be the better word. Thank you. And I would feel the fatigue in my lower back before I would feel it in my legs. So there's always going to be a limiting factor, and the more compound the movement is, the weakest muscle group, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and you find out where that is pretty quick once you start doing some of these more compound movements, or once you start more closely approximating your strength potential.
Yeah. Well said. Mike does come up with good questions, to be fair.
Yeah,
The problem is, with all these questions, in like most cases, we need to like see everything. That's what the problem is, I think. Especially when it comes to training, it's very tough to understand things, because, like, I sometimes get coaching clients I work with or people I consult with, and they'll say, my form's good. I'm like, yeah, but what is good form? What principles do you have outlined? It's quite a hard line to tread, because I don't want to tell them that they're stupid or they're doing it wrong or anything like that. But I want to say, look, just show me what you're doing. I can point you in the right direction. It might be that I don't revamp everything, but I can change it slightly, and you might get a benefit from it. So, but yeah, we continue, we persist.
And obviously, Mike, you have to make your own decisions. My 2 cents, if I were to ever start squatting again, I would do high bar squats instead of low bar. Low bar tends to be the more powerlifting squat. High bar is like kind of closer to the Olympic squat, how like Tom Platz would squat. Bar sits much higher. Your torso stays a lot more upright. And I think it's a lot safer for the lower back. High bar squats. If I ever squatted again, that's how I would do it. Knowing that for me, with my genetics and my strength levels and my biomechanics, I would want to be really careful and protective of my lower back.
Yeah, makes sense. I miss squatting. Honestly, I really miss squatting, because that's something I'm really good at.
I don't.
I've got really strong legs, like even now. It's my glutes and hips. Every workout that is limited or I can't train as hard as it's always glutes and hips. My quads can go forever. So it's annoying. I think that wraps it up anyway, guys. I'm getting a bit irritable now. Jeremy's
2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours is a good clip.
That makes a good clip. Yeah, you guys have got double the time under ramble.
Yeah, double the carnivores, double the ramble.
Yeah, brilliant. The next nearest competitor channel only delivers 45 minutes once per week.
Those bastards.
Bastards. Selfish. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, we're having a laugh anyway, guys. Yeah, thank you for joining. We're going to leave you guys to it. Appreciate you coming by. If you do have any videos to send me for next week, email them to me, which my email is somewhere on my website. Find a way to link it. I think it's thecompositionconsultant@gmail.com. That's one way you can just share it with me. So share it so I have Google Drive viewer access, or use an alternative method that I can access without signing up for something, basically. I'm more than happy to look at it. But yeah, easy peasy.
Excellent.
All right, let's press one more button before we go. There we go. Finish.